What if I told you that in one of the most remote and coldest places on the planet, someone, or something, left a mark so large it can be seen from space? Not in Egypt, not in Mexico, not in any of the places you already know, but at the southernmost tip of the world, in a land covered in ice and wind, where almost no one lives and where almost no one looks, in Tierra del Fuego, a place so far from civilization that for centuries it was considered the end of the world. And yet, someone was there. Someone left something behind, something that Google Maps discovered by accident, and that no one has been able to explain ever since. Tonight, we explore together one of the most disturbing and fascinating mysteries that exist on our planet. Breathe deeply, relax, and prepare to see the world in a different way. Close your eyes for a moment. Imagine you are flying over the southernmost tip of the planet. Below you, there is only ice, mountains covered in snow, dark and dense forests, rivers of freezing water that wind through lonely valleys. There are no cities, no roads, no signs of modern life, only wild nature in its purest and most ancient form. That is Tierra del Fuego, an archipelago located at the southern tip of South America, shared between Argentina and Chile, separated from the continent by the Strait of Magellan, and swept by the strongest winds on the planet. For centuries, this place was known as the end of the world. The first European explorers who arrived here were terrified by its wild landscape and brutal climate. But the indigenous peoples who lived here, the Selknam, the Yagan, the Kaweskar, knew this place as their home for thousands of years. And perhaps they knew something that we still do not understand. Because in the mountains of Tierra del Fuego, there is something that should not be there, something that no one planted, no one built, and no one can explain, something that can only be seen from the sky. It all began in the most unexpected way possible. It was not an archaeologist, not a scientist, not a million-dollar expedition with cutting-edge technology. It was an ordinary person sitting in front of their computer, exploring the world through Google Maps, just like millions of people do every single day. But this person was looking at a region that very few people ever look at, a remote region. Cold, apparently empty, Tierra del Fuego, and suddenly, they saw something that made their blood run cold. At the exact coordinates of 55 degrees 32 minutes south, 69 degrees 15 minutes west, on the summit of a mountain covered in snow and ice, there were faces, not one face, not two, multiple faces, perfectly formed, looking up toward the sky. Faces of different sizes, different colors, different expressions. Some look human, others look like something different. The image was so disturbing that the person shared it immediately on social media. And within hours, it went viral. Thousands of people searched the coordinates on Google Maps to see it with their own eyes. And what they found left them speechless. There they were, clearly visible in the satellite images. Faces carved, or formed, or simply existing on the summit of a mountain in the most remote place on the planet. How did they get there? Who put them there? Or perhaps, had they always been there, waiting for someone to find them? The questions began to multiply, and the answers refused to appear. But to truly understand this mystery, we must first understand the place where it occurs. Because Tierra del Fuego is not just a name on a map. It is one of the most mysterious and fascinating places on our entire planet. Tierra del Fuego received its name from the first European explorers who sailed along its coasts in the 16th century. When the sailors of Ferdinand Magellan's expedition passed through this strait in 1520, they saw something that deeply disturbed them. On the shores, there were fires. Fires lit by the indigenous peoples who had inhabited these lands for thousands of years. Fires burning in the darkness, in one of the coldest and most remote places on the planet. And so, the name was born, Tierra del Fuego, the land of fires. But long before the Europeans arrived, this land was home to extraordinary civilizations. The Selknam, also known as the Onas, were a warrior and mysterious people who inhabited the northern part of the main island. They were expert hunters. They lived in harmony with the wild nature that surrounded them. And they had rituals and ceremonies that continue to fascinate anthropologists to this day. The Yagan, considered one of the oldest peoples of the American continent, inhabited the coasts and channels of the South. They were extraordinary navigators, capable of surviving in extreme temperatures with very little clothing. Their knowledge of the sea and the stars was unmatched. And the Kaweskar, nomads of the sea, traveled by canoe through the labyrinth of fjords and channels of western Patagonia for centuries. All of these peoples had something in common. They knew every corner of this land. They knew its mountains, its valleys, its rivers, its secrets. Is it possible that they also knew the secret of the faces on the mountain? Is it possible that it was they who created them, hundreds or thousands of years ago, for reasons that we still do not understand? Or perhaps the faces are far older than any known human civilization. Perhaps they were placed there by someone or something that visited this planet long before us. When the images of the faces of Tierra del Fuego began circulating on social media, scientists and experts were quick to offer their explanations. The first and most widely accepted is pareidolia. Pareidolia is a fascinating psychological phenomenon. It is the tendency of the human brain to find familiar patterns, especially faces, in random shapes. It is the same reason you see figures in clouds, or why the moon seems to have a face, or why you sometimes see faces in wood grain or in rocks. Our brain is programmed to recognize faces. It is a survival mechanism that we developed over millions of years of evolution. And when we look at the satellite images of Tierra del Fuego, our brain searches for patterns and finds faces where perhaps there is only ice, shadows, and natural erosion. This is the most rational explanation, but it is not the only one. The second scientific explanation has to do with how Google Maps works. The satellite images we see on Google Maps are not simple photographs. They are compositions of multiple images taken at different times and from different angles that are then processed and joined together by computer algorithms. This processing can create visual anomalies. It can make certain natural formations in the terrain, hills, valleys, patterns of snow and ice, appear to have shapes that they do not actually have. This is what some call a visual artifact, an illusion created by technology. According to this explanation, the faces are not really on the mountain. They only exist in the image processed by Google's algorithm. And the third scientific explanation talks about natural geology. The mountains of Tierra del Fuego are young from a geological point of view. They were formed by tectonic activity and sculpted by glaciers over thousands of years. This process can create extraordinarily symmetrical and detailed rock formations. Formations that sometimes, when seen from above, can appear artificial or intentional. The shadows cast by the mountains at certain times of day, combined with the contrast between white snow and dark rock, can create surprising optical illusions. But there is something that these scientific explanations do not completely answer. Why do the faces look so perfect? Why are there so many in the same place? And why do some of them look so deliberate? Beyond the scientific explanations, there are theories that capture something that science alone cannot completely explain. Theories that invite us to think beyond what we already know. The first alternative theory is that of the indigenous peoples. Some researchers and anthropologists believe that the formations we see on the mountain could be the work of the original peoples of Tierra del Fuego. The Selknam and the Yagan had a deep and spiritual relationship with their land. They created rock art. They performed sacred ceremonies in specific places in the landscape, and they had an extraordinary knowledge of their territory. Is it possible that they created these figures hundreds of years ago in a high and visible place as an offering to their gods, or as a marker of their territory, or as a star map? The figures can only be seen from the air, from the ground. They are invisible, exactly like the Nazca lines in Peru. And that brings us to a fascinating question. Did the indigenous peoples of Tierra del Fuego have a way to fly, or to see their land from above? Or did they create these figures to be seen by someone who could? The second alternative theory is that of lost civilizations. Some researchers believe that before the peoples we know, there existed in South America a much older and more advanced civilization. A civilization that disappeared thousands of years ago, leaving only traces in the landscape, traces like the faces of Tierra del Fuego. This theory connects with the mysteries of Atlantis, with the Nazca lines, with Tiahuanaco in Bolivia, and with dozens of other mysterious archaeological sites in South America. Is there an invisible thread that connects all these mysteries? Did there exist a mother civilization, an original civilization that left its mark in the most remote places on the planet? And the third alternative theory is perhaps the most fascinating of all, the extraterrestrial theory. Some researchers believe that the faces of Tierra del Fuego were not created by humans. They were created by visitors from other worlds. According to this theory, Earth has been visited by extraterrestrial civilizations for thousands of years, and these visitors left marks in the landscape. Marks that can only be seen from the air, like signals for other travelers from space. The faces of Tierra del Fuego would be one of those marks, and the fact that they are in one of the most remote and inaccessible places on the planet would not be a coincidence. It would be exactly the point, a place where humans would be unlikely to arrive. A place where the marks could remain intact for thousands or even millions of years, waiting to be discovered, not by archaeologists with picks and shovels, but by ordinary people with a computer and Google Maps. After everything we have explored tonight, there is something that remains unanswered, something that none of the explanations, neither the scientific ones nor the alternative ones, can resolve completely. And it is this: the faces of Tierra del Fuego are not alone. In recent years, as satellite images have become more detailed and accessible, similar formations have been discovered in other remote places on the planet, in deserts, in mountains, on islands lost in the middle of the ocean. Formations that seem too symmetrical to be natural, too deliberate to be accidental. Is it pareidolia deceiving us in all these places at the same time? Or is there something more, something we still do not understand, that connects all these mysteries? Perhaps the answer is up there, in the satellite images that no one has looked at yet. Perhaps you, tonight, after hearing this story, will be the next person to discover something extraordinary. And so, as the mountains of Tierra del Fuego continue to keep their secrets beneath the ice and snow, you can rest tonight. Let your mind relax. Let your thoughts settle like the wind on a quiet night. The world is so much larger and more mysterious than we believe. There are secrets in the most remote places on the planet, secrets that wait patiently to be discovered. And sometimes, the most extraordinary discoveries do not require expensive expeditions or advanced technology. They only require curiosity, the same curiosity that brought you here tonight. Close your eyes, breathe deeply, and dream of the mysteries that are still waiting to be found. Good night.